Welcome to Discover the Difference, a podcast brought to you by C3. I'm your host, Jamie Reid, and on today's episode, we're going to do a quick recap of Season 2. We had some amazing guests, and it's going to be hosted by our pal, Wayne Partello. Wayne's a former CMO of the San Diego Padres, and he is one of the leaders, alongside Kitty Jackson, of CUENTO. He's going to stop by and ask us questions about our favorite moments, where we got tripped up, probably ask us about our outtakes because we have a lot of them we have to cut out. And then we're going to shift gears and we're going to focus on Season 3. We have a slew of pro athletes, ESPN commentators, Green Berets, leadership coaches, physicians, and even a UFC champion comes on to sit down and talk to us about his legacy. So I hope you enjoy this recap of 2 and the tee up for Season 3.
All right, so we're back here yet again. I'm not supposed to look at the camera, but I feel like on the opening of the shot, I really should. So, all right, now I'm going to look at these guys. But Jamie and Gabe, C3, you got 2 seasons under your belt now. I remember when we first talked about doing a podcast, it was like, all right, let's see how this thing goes. And now you're into it. Like, so any takeaways, any just high level, some fun things that you guys have gotten to experience from doing this?
Yeah, I'd say we really sucked in the beginning. And man, I was freaking nervous.
Right.
Not nervous talking to people because it's really what we do in our jobs every day. But I was like cutting intros, and we were laughing about it today. We were like, man, in the beginning, it would take like 20 times to cut an intro.
Right.
And if you watch them back, they're like, you see the little edits where it's like I get one sentence out and then go to the next one and work through it, where now it's like so much more comfortable. And studying other podcasters and has helped.
Yep.
But I think we're putting a lot of people constantly in front of cameras as a company.
Right.
C3 does it a lot. And I can really empathize with what it's like if you just hop behind a camera one time. Mm-hmm. It's intimidating. You're talking to a lens. It's different than interacting like I'm looking at you right now. So it just gets more natural the more you do it, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I was super nervous in the beginning, and I still, just being around you, Wayne, makes me nervous.
Well, we had scripts too, right? So,
right.
I mean, we have these cue cards where Mia interviews people a little bit, gets some questions and stuff. And I feel like in the beginning, I felt like there was a story board, if not laid out, that we kind of would follow. But really, when we interact with business owners, we don't have a pre-scripted storyboard. There are some go-to questions that we like to understand about them, but we love to just find rabbit holes to go down. And so I think the evolution, I hope that comes across, is that we're not just scripting, right? It's we genuinely love hearing these people's stories, and we want them to go in unpredictable places and just down rabbit holes.
Well, I also love that it has nothing to do with what you do every day.
Well, that's what makes it fun.
No, but that's what's kind of like fun about this, right? Is like you guys are really just what you do in your everyday business. It is the same thing. You do spend time with people, learn about them, and this is just a different medium to do it, right? And you're not worried about closing the deal. It's more about just learning, and I know you guys do that in your sales process anyways.
I totally see where you're coming from saying it's nothing to do with what we do every day, and in some contexts that's true. But we were just at an Assurance conference last week. It's all the largest and best privately held companies coming together, insurance agencies. And I was asked, why do you have a podcast? Mm-hmm. It is what we do every day, in the sense that you need to get out and get to know people. You need to get to know the individuals that are leading these companies, and you need to understand their story and their company's story. And so when they say, why do you do this podcast? Number one reason, the main audience for us is our own team. Mm-hmm. To show our producers, we don't go out and talk. We don't go out and sell statements. We ask questions and really have to understand their story. So our audience, first and foremost, starts with our own team. But we have some really interesting people, and they have an amazing audience who may not have fully heard the story. So we hope that it's casting that net to broadcast to their audience, and that each season that audience just grows a little bit more and it starts to expand beyond our own teams.
And I also find in doing these you're interviewing all these different types of people, there are lessons that you can take and apply to what you do every day.
Oh yeah, that's the beauty of this
Right.
thing is you get charged up and inspired and like, holy crap, that was really cool the way that you transformed and you pivoted, to the adversity. And I was just thinking about it this last week. We lost a mentor and a longtime producer, and that's something that he was just really good at. It was like an
Probably the
old
best.
school,
Natural,
like he was just so interested in people, and he just asked a million questions. And I'm like, well, that's what we do here on a podcast.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I love the rabbit holes. Like, so when you guys interviewed Mana, you guys went down the rabbit hole of her love of Boys to Men. So
I think we referenced you in that segment because everybody know Wayne also loves Boys
Yeah,
to Men.
I think she wants to go on a Boys to Men cruise.
listen, I would do. I boy bands are my thing.
His was Backstreet Boys, though, right?
Well, I was
Or,
big New Kids on the Block.
New Kids.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sorry.
then obviously Backstreet and NSYNC. I actually, you may hear it in my voice. I just got back I literally just landed from Las Vegas where we did karaoke, and I did a pretty good Backstreet's Back karaoke rendition.
Can we add that into the video?
There is no video.
There has to be video somewhere. I don't believe that.
But obviously, her story was just so inspirational of the adversity and the challenges she had to overcome, and then what that has led her to become today.
Absolutely. I mean, when you listen to it, she was 16. She bought a company at 16. I mean, who does that?
Right.
Well, I saw where the Padres had a 17-year-old kid behind the dish. 16, catching, right? Who does that? Well, Mana did it, and that kid for the Padres does it. I don't know anyone else who's operating at a truly professional level that I've met. I'm sure they're out there. But it's inspirational that she just had that entrepreneurial spirit to see an opportunity and not to have all the answers. She didn't say, I have to check every box and get to 100%. I'm going to step into it and I'm going to figure it out. And then to just level, and overcome adversity every step of the way. It's so inspirational.
Yeah, it was just super cool to see how she just pivoted at each place and just found that next opportunity. And now she's like a, makeup legend.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, I think what I really liked about her story, and it's a story that I relate to very well, is that there are different paths to success, right? So she didn't follow a traditional path, but obviously the path was right for her, and her, ability to adapt and solve problems and grow a business at 16 years old is wild to everybody else, but to her it was like, it's what I'm going to do, and now you see it, it's pretty amazing.
I mean, Mana's one of those people that she could go anywhere next. I mean, her company may be the end game for her, but she got out of that and went into what she described as an old white guy club. She went through a man's world and banking and grew up in that industry. I mean, she really has had a very diverse background that set her stage, and Gabe and I are involved with her in Alder, and we get to watch her give back to the community. It doesn't just stop with what she does with her company. It's multifaceted.
Yeah, it's always so fun to see somebody who comes from a modest background and really just makes it. And then in turn goes back and says, hey, I want to give back and I want to support kids in poverty. And so just seeing that, hearing that story is just inspiring.
And I think when that does happen, it's also a beacon of light for so many to go, wait, because I know, like, I talk about it all the time. I got to do all these really cool things in my career, and I still get to do really cool things. It's amazing. But nobody told me this was a possibility. Like, there was nobody going, oh, and by the way, you could go do these things.
Yeah.
It was just like, here's the path for you, right? You grew up in this town. When you go here, you could go to this college, and then when you come out, you're going to have this job, and this is how it's going to go. And none of that sounded interesting to me. Like, and obviously for her, it's the same thing. And then she comes back and makes that difference, and you go, oh, wait, now with the internet, I feel like stuff like this allows people to go find those stories for inspiration. But when you go back to where you came from and make a difference, man, that's so powerful.
100%.
There was high-end product, and then there's like drugstore products. And at the time, there wasn't really something quite in the middle. And then so I wanted to hit that like middle market. We call it affordable luxury, where it's still accessible to average everyday person, but at really great price points. And beyond that, all of the products were multifunctional, long wear, innovative. So a lot of the time, most women say, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time to do makeup. But really, it should be something that you can do very quickly and easily, and shouldn't take, blocking off that much time in your schedule to do. So I wanted to give women the tools to like look good and feel good in a very short amount of time.
Well, all right. So next, I mean, you go in a completely different direction, right?
A little bit more masculine direction.
Yes, right. You got William Branham, right? Navy SEAL comes in. You guys, I mean, that is the contrast of conversation. I mean, that alone must be exhilarating.
Well, first thought I had with him is I hope I never am too drunk in a bar and cross him the wrong way, because he's a physically imposing man that you wouldn't want to be in that scenario.
Like both of you.
Yeah.
No, he's a killer.
But what I loved that he did, that you see certain personalities that are in those really tough settings, and you think it's all about toughness, and he displayed so much vulnerability. It reminded me a little bit of Nick Hardwick's story, where he talked about not getting in to the Navy SEAL training camp a couple times, missing the thresholds he needed to even qualify to get in, and then not making it through. What was it, 1 or 2 times he didn't make it through?
I think it was 3 times.
Something like that.
It was
Wild.
He kept doing it until he did it. He stuck with it.
That's crazy.
Which most of these guys, when they go through this, they get washed out. They're done. And I think he told a story about somebody got on and told him he couldn't do it, and that's what was motivating for him.
Yeah, he's like, all right, well, now I am going to do it. But yeah, and I think he used adversity, and he talked about mental health. He used adversity to fuel his passion and overcome things and inspire him. And that's such a story, because it's not all the good and success we have in our life that often drives us to a place. A lot of times it is that adversity.
That's a great point.
And so it's good. I got interviewed by one of the baseball players on my team this week, and he said, "What advice do you have for me to not make mistakes, and any mistakes that you made?" And I'm like, I want you to make mistakes. Go make a lot of them, because that's really where you're going to learn. So don't approach life and not making mistakes. Approach life that you're going to learn from your mistakes and be better on the backside of them. And he's a walking example of that.
Yeah, and he was very vulnerable about talking about struggle with alcohol abuse and depression, and it's something that he's really passionate about, because it's a lot of people in the military that when they come out, they have a lot of those challenges.
Yeah.
And he discovered that CBD could be something that could really help people and help with depression, and so he's totally focused on that and has gotten great results.
I think one of the things that people, when you have a change in career, right? So you see it a lot with the military, you see it in professional sports, like anything where you have that, the career almost became your identity. Right. And you didn't even notice it happening, right? It just became this thing. And it's always, especially of these elite type positions too, where I always joke about it with like professional athletes, or even when you worked in the front office side of a professional sports team, when you walk into the room, right? Somebody goes, "Oh, that's so-and-so. They are this amazing thing," whatever it may be.
Right.
It feels so good. Because my wife makes the joke all the time that when I was DJing, hosting wet t-shirt contests, I was actually doing the same job that I was when I was working for a professional sport, right? I was utilizing music, entertainment to get people to spend more money. That's what I was doing, right? But when she said, "Oh, my husband hosts wet t-shirt contests," didn't get the same response as my husband works for the Miami Dolphins, right? Like,
right.
But the pride is there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
But the joke was that, and then I realized that feeling that people get, and then when you start interacting with former athletes, and I know Nick has been on the show, there's a real struggle on the backside of that, and I can only imagine for these guys as well. But the thing that stuck out to me second to that was he really wanted to talk about getting naked.
He did talk about that a lot. Why does it all come back to wet t-shirt contest for you? No, but on the wet t-shirt comment, I mean, one of the things you talked about, like you would have Snoop Dogg, same kind of concept, right? Bring this outside energy and music into a setting where you had low ticket sales. and use that draw to boost ticket sales and hence revenue for the organization. You know, like that's a lesson that every business owner or chief revenue officer could use. That here's this story, you know, it's
The thing that was really interesting that he talked about was purpose. And he said, when you're a Navy SEAL, purpose is really easy, right?
True.
You're there to defend your country, to defend freedom. But when you transition out of that, now you got to find your purpose outside of the service of military.
Yep.
And I think that is also true in anything that we do. Is whatever job we're in, and that's what I really connected with, is just being in purpose.
Yeah, you couple purpose with structure.
Yep.
You lose the two key things that are the foundation in military and professional sports. When you leave a W-2 job for a company and you become an entrepreneur, it's those two things that everybody's trying to figure out, because the path isn't defined. Like you're defining it, kind of like what you said about your experience. You're creating that own path. It's a difficult transition for a lot of people, but I mean, he's nailed it.
Yeah, and I mean, just to touch on the naked part, because I thought it was riveting. Like,
Keep going back to that.
no, but because it's real, but the acronym works, right? Like to never quit, right? Accept failure. What did we just talk about, right? Like kill mediocrity, right? Kill mediocre. For me, that's a big one. Like huge. I've been going out doing like seminars and meeting with other companies, and we dive in, right? And they want to talk about brand because that's what we do. But what we find is once we get in is that the brand can't breathe if there's not great communication, and if there's people on the team that aren't bought in on where it's going, and that mediocrity slows the entire organization down.
100%.
It's unbelievable. And so that one, and then expose your fears. Like, man, that's powerful when you actually say and be okay. Because I know when I landed the job with the Padres, you're nervous, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, everybody's like, oh, are you ever afraid? Like, you're not pushing yourself hard enough if you're not afraid. Like, you've got to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. It's how you're going to grow. And, you're going to make mistakes. Like, that's going to happen. And being okay with that and going, I don't love that I made a mistake. I hate making mistakes, but I learned from it. How do I get better? And then how do you, as a leader, have your team have the confidence that that's not going to be you're not going to get fired.
That's not your defining moment,
right?
You gotta have some trust tree,
and
atmosphere,
and then at the end of it, to do the work. Like, how many people love to write entrepreneur in their Instagram bio? Yeah, like legit.
You actually have to do stuff,
right? Like, oh, I'm an influencer, I'm a public speaker, and I'm an entrepreneur. Cool.
What work are you doing?
What business do you have? No, but it looks really good.
I'm still working on that part.
You gotta do the work. I love it.
I ended up going to a team called SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 2 on the East Coast. And, their focus was undersea. They have this mini submarine. You put 2 guys in the front, 4 guys in the back, and you go places in the world and you do stuff that no one knows the wiser. And so it was a very cool capability, but I didn't want to do that job. I wanted to be a sniper. I wanted to kick doors and do all that other stuff. And then I eventually became a sniper. Then I went back and I taught sniper school a few years later. And I was actually teaching sniper school when 9/11 happened. I was like the senior instructor on the ground at the time. I was not the senior man, but I was the senior instructor. And then guys that were going through the course, or the guys that were like student instructors that were working for me, even though they were senior to me, they were like 9/11 happened, and they all turned to me and they said, what do we do?
So, all right. So then I think in that same vein of transitioning off of doing amazing things, when you guys had Denise Mueller on, who holds the land speed record, 183 miles an hour, but a completely different transition and her challenges that she went through after doing all those amazing
Well, first
things.
of all, she hit, I think, what'd she say, 189, but the way the record books record it, there was an amount of time you sustain it.
Wow.
It
the
logs.
record corrected.
Wow, that's messed up.
But I'm like, I remember in college, I hit 163 on a CBR 1100, and I was scared out of my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it felt like if you lean back at all, you were going to take off and fly into outer space. And so
163.
I did 163 on a huge bike with a massive fairing, right? She's on a bike without an engine, tucked between, metal flanges or whatever behind a race car.
That's crazy.
And it's like, a minor, tiny little pebble in the road or a tweak or anything she does, she's dead. It's like I was like scared for her listening to her tell the story, even though the story she's telling was in the past, not the future. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, I think as whenever you push your body, right, mentally and physically, like there's lessons to be learned from that. Of like back to you go back just one, right, like of facing your fears and like admitting your fears and being okay with them, exposing them, pushing yourself to those limits must just be. And then what do you do next?
Right.
Kind of did it.
Well, the other thing that was just super fun to hear is how she created her own category, and it wasn't like this is the men's time and this is the women's time. Like, this is the record.
Yeah, that's
like men or women, this is the record. And that was something that I think she was really proud of.
Yeah.
And it was really humbling just to, to hear about that.
And I love that. I think, I mean, you guys know you're in an industry that's been doing business the same way for basically ever. And you're kind of creating your own category, right? Like, we're not going to just be an insurance company. We're not going to just be a risk. Like, we're going to be a partner to, like, that's a completely different category. Like, I know like you guys do our stuff, and as a partner, like, you feel like you have this outside entity that's really inside, and it's the same thing that we're trying to create our own category of.
Totally.
Like, we don't want to just be an agency. Like, we're not an agency, right? Like, we're kind of like similarly, right? You're creating that category. It's really challenging though, because the person on the other side of the table knows the standards, and they're going, no, but this is what you do. Like, well, no, I'm not that. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not going for the women's record. I'm going for the record.
Yeah.
So
well, it's sort of we had a prospective meeting with a client, and in the follow-up email where we're pitching to take over their insurance, and I brought along a junior broker with me, and she's like, we didn't even really talk about insurance. I'm like, that's the point. We're as good or better than everybody at insurance. We talked about this over here. But then when I followed it up, I said, by the way, we offer the absolute best in class executive leadership training that can help you remove some of the obstacles that you identified in our meeting in your 5-year strategy to get where you're going. And it's conducted by somebody who's on the Honor Foundation board and other special force operators that are absolutely life-changing. And when they responded, they're like, what is this you're talking about again? Why are insurance people talking about this? We're like, this is important to get where you're going in 5 years. It's risks that are going to inhibit it. Not all of those are insurance.
Right.
And that's why we're leaning into them, and we're bringing other people in who have those skill sets. But I wanted to touch on one other thing Denise said too, or came out in her story. She had the adversity element too. And like a lot of business owners or people who are just charging hard, she burned out. She's in the competitive sport of racing, and she kind of burned out on it. She became elite, was winning everything, and just burned out. And she took some time away. And when she decided to come back and set the land speed record, one that, like you said, crossed both male and female genders, she had to rebuild her state of mind. And so listening to her go through that mental process of digesting burnout and all these things, the fatigue that comes with being so successful, to go to that next level, she had to rebuild her mind, and I think it's important because all of us that are high performers get to those states, and it doesn't mean it's the end. It may mean we need some break or need pause or need whatever to rebuild that mental state. And she did it through outside support and help. She got the resources.
She got help. She was doing, hypnosis and visualizations, and that really helped her see herself getting back to it, which was really cool to see. Is like, hey, you don't always hear these top athletes using hypnosis and visualization to say, hey, I can do this again.
Yeah, and it's hard too when you're trying to build a plan for the future if you're still executing today. Like that's one of the biggest things we see with executive level folks that may not have the infrastructure in their organizations to actually take a plan and run with it. They don't get the time to take that pause and go, all right, what's next? And I know in my life when that happened and I did get those moments, I look back at those times of my career, and that's when I was absolutely on fire, right?
Yeah.
I had that moment we were good. I paused. I set a plan for the next 3 years. Look at the 3 years that followed. Oh,
very much so in the preparation game to not only get over some of my issues from race anxiety that I'd had previously, but to also prepare for a very, very crazy, wild adventure of doing this land speed record that no other woman had done and only a handful, basically a dozen men had really done. Took not only the physical feat, but 50% easy was the mental preparation. One, I had to get over the race anxiety element because I was racing and I wasn't doing very well at the beginning because I'm a people pleaser by nature. I'm a nice person, and and when you're in a pack of racers, it's who comes across the line first, and you have to be a little aggressive.
and I know you guys do that a lot, and it's actually, this is going to be a killer transition, because when Knight Campbell was on the show, he talked about using the outdoors as an opportunity to reset. And I know you guys, that's I see your trips wherever you guys are going, but that you've identified that as well. Like, that's a commonality that you guys share as well.
Well, I think just, connecting with nature and the awe of it, and realizing that, hey, we are a little, less significant, and our issues are less significant than we think, then we can start to think beyond,
Sure.
The day-to-day challenges and the day-to-day issues, and how we as a team can just be creative and really think about it differently. And that's something that, Knight really talked about and was very inspiring.
Oh, I mean, I don't know what the exact statistic is, but they say something like, a 20-minute walk outside every day, what it does to reset your mind and, get the endorphins firing and do the things you need to have a positive mindset. Well, Knight and his team, they put that on crack, right? You talk about, if there isn't an element of fear, you're not really pushing yourself, getting better, going. I mean, their trips with their academy, dude, they span every walk of life. I mean, they can dummy them down if to the level that the people are at, where it pushes them just a little, or you could be ice climbing crazy stuff in Alaska where if you make a wrong turn, you're dead. And pulling that together and coupling the leadership and the team building and all that, it's the perfect setup to really bring teams together, open minds, and have divergent thinking.
I love that. It's really good.
You want some more? Right.
No, it's really good.
Okay.
It is
Keep going.
I mean, we're big divergent thinking guys. Shout out to
I knew you
Vun.
would get that in.
What's
Shout out
I
to
was
Vun.
gonna say,
I'm like, buzzword.
Buzzword, Jamie. Always gonna get it in there. I love that.
I don't know what my expectations were. I came from I graduated in a class of 58 people. So I was valedictorian, captain of all the teams, and it felt pretty good about myself. And I got to Annapolis and realized really quickly that I was not the top of the class, which was good in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
All right, so taking that, I think the next episode was something completely different when you guys had Justin Gray on. And Justin being the serial entrepreneur, I think we talked about adversity and challenges. I think the stories of taking a business from struggle and resurrecting, I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do, right? Like, you guys know that I love creating a brand, but I love fixing a brand. Like, that's my favorite. Like, oh, it's here, it went down. Here are the reasons it went down. This is what it should be. I think, their story of really assessing before they take on a project, and when they go in, they go all in and crush it. I just think there was so much there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, some of what we talked about with Justin correlates directly to C3, where he talked about aligning people within those organizations, whether it be a takeover, startup, or whatever it is. Everybody's got to be rowing the boat the same way. And he touched on the topics of equity and those elements that really do bring a company together, where every single person has a purpose to drive forward. And he gave all kinds of great advice, from legal to how you structure that and get people aligned, that if you're trying to figure out how to get your company either restarted or start one and quickly accelerate to the next level, he's the guy to listen to, because that's his wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think his ingredient to success really was about alignment, and how to get everybody together. And he did that through equity. He did that through culture.
Yep.
And he, sold multiple companies, and and really help create a lot of wealth for all the people that work with him. So
alignment is so often overlooked. Like I've been on this big alignment.
Is that another buzzword thing we're touching on here?
No, so it's funny. I've been doing a lot more speaking, and when I bring up a list of different topics and we bring up alignment, it's never on the list that they wanted to talk about. But once you actually bring it up, they're like, actually, yes. Like, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
And what I've been really honing in on is, as leaders of the company, our job is to get us to the goal and get us to the destination, but it's also to do it as efficiently as possible. And what alignment allows you to do is, you might have, you guys have a lot of employees, right? They may all get to the goal a different way, but if you can get them there the fastest way possible, consistently, you free up all that extra time and all that extra effort to move on to the next project. And I think that, for me, alignment, it's not sexy, right? Like it's actually not a buzzword. Like I don't hear a lot about it.
It takes a lot of work.
It's a lot of
intentionality.
Work. Yep.
You have to really be intentional as a leadership team on how you're going to attack getting everybody to row the same direction. And it's probably one of the hardest things for an organization to do and maintain as you grow. As you get bigger, it gets exponentially harder.
Yeah.
And that's where the leadership team has to be aligned to be able to align everybody else.
Yeah, and when you have that incredible leadership team, right? Like sometimes you have to look and decide if this person, if it's the right place for them or at the right time.
There was something Justin said that threw
go
me a curveball, and when he said it, I had an image in my mind, and it's another buzzword. He said, if you see that piece of crap on the floor, pick it up. And as soon as he said it, I thought, if I see my wife picking up the dog poop before I do, life's over.
Wow.
And that's all I could think about when he said it. But then he kind of went a different direction about where he was going with it.
Well, I worked at Disney, at the Disney Hollywood Studios when I was 19 years old. And you go through training, and one of the things, it's 3 days of the Disney Institute, and one of the things they teach you is you never walk by a piece of trash. So back then, I was just a kid, right? Managers, you'd see everybody from costumed employees all the way up to the people in suits. Nobody walked by a piece of trash. And you would see, if you did, you would be asked to come over, and they were like, did you not see that?
The big guy in the sky is monitoring you. You
passed
that.
Walking. But then fast forward, when I started to work in sports venues, right? And I'm a senior executive in a ballpark every day. And I realized how impactful that was to me as a kid to see the guy in the suit stop mid-conversation, but excuse me, Jamie, and stop and pick up that piece of trash. Every person notices it, right? And it makes such an impact, and again, drives you back to that alignment, which is super powerful. Alignment a lot of times is driven by actions, right? Of them seeing you do exactly what you've been preaching. 100%. And I think that's really powerful.
100%.
And then, as you grow those leaders, right? And you have this amazing leadership team, sometimes you assess and you go, oh, wow, that person's amazing, but maybe it's not. They may have, their next leap may not be here, and that's okay, right?
50 clients that we've done this for, and it's organically just growing and growing. So, like I said, purely by accident, and really was and still is a incredibly fun journey to be on. I never would have guessed that I would own a service-based business.
Like, and I love when you guys had Dave Sanderson on, talked about all his time with Tony Robbins, but then for Tony as an incredible leader to go, hey man, you've done it. You've done everything you can do for me. It's time for you to take your leap. Like, wow. Like that takes, listen, we are all giving people. I know all of you very well, but we're also selfish, right? Like, if I have an amazing person, I don't want them to leave my organization at all costs because we're going to win together. To have that and say that and see that in a person and give them those wings to go fly is pretty powerful.
I thought for sure the alignment transition was going to be around getting all the people off the plane. Like, how hard is it? He had to go save an 80-year-old lady in the back of the plane in freezing water and get her off. No, the Tony Robbins thing was really powerful. To have Tony Robbins come to you and say, leave, go, get out of here. Like that, it's sort of like taking the leash off the dog and saying, all right, it's time, go run, and for him to step into it and recognize he was ready and it was his moment to do it, and to have somebody that's maybe one of the most powerful speakers in the world tell you that. I mean, I guess you can't say no, right? Like, who tells him no?
And he did. I mean, he soared, the Miracle and the Hudson, and he's written multiple books now that are just inspiring on mentorship. He's a huge speaker. Just talking with him, some of the tidbits about his experience on the plane and in the crash, and how they, there's certain people that, had this call to action. I'm here to help get everybody out. And he had so many good stories about how, certain people acted. And then he looked back, looking back on it and the trauma that a lot of the people experienced, he kind of talked about like this difference between some people that had, this intense trauma and they took it as a gift, and were coming from a place of gratefulness, and then the others that just never could get over it. And it really, what he said is like, it's how they framed what it meant to them, to that person. And so I thought that was really interesting, because you see that, some people who have been in such intense trauma, but they take it as an opportunity.
Yep.
And then they do great things in their life.
Well, and he's in doing that too, he's so humble and relatable.
Yep.
He if he likes a post or something on mine, I like get all giddy about it. But at the end of the day, he's just a normal person. And every time I see him interacting with people on social media, that person he's interacting with, I feel like it's so relatable. I mean, he has a unique gift in that sense.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a little bit of Tony Robbins rubbing off on him, because I think, that's what he's special at doing too, is relating and connecting with people.
Yeah, and having that power to impact a person, especially with like a Tony Robbins, where you're one with many, right? I mean, he has smaller versions too, but he does a lot of one with many and being able to inspire a group.
But last year was more about going back to the Hudson River where I almost lost my life and getting redemption. That was last year's motivation. This year's motivation was to see how much I improved, but more, how could I support and raise more money? And take somebody who had not been an open water swimmer, my swim buddy, into a body of water, which is extremely challenging.
When you guys had Nancy Gale on, she talked about her love of smiling and how a smile can impact a situation. Like just that alone. And I know you guys know me, that's my jam, right? Yeah. Like if I can make you smile by wearing a shirt, like I'm down, like whatever it takes.
You said Nancy's name and I just started smiling.
Right? Yeah.
She's infectious.
You think about, like, we're talking about trauma, right? And for Nancy, like the traumas that she's been through,
that's as intense as it gets.
So you can't think of like worse traumas. She talked about her own experience with the rape, her mother, also getting burnt to death, and just the most horrific traumas. And she saw them as life experience gifts that she's still smiling. And that's what wild. She's done with her business and how she's overcome these traumas is just mind blowing.
Talk about framing, how you frame trauma and experiences. I mean, she's the poster child of it, and she lives it every single second of her day. We're exposed to her quite a bit through Alder, and she's never not that. It's not like if you saw Nancy one time, you might think, oh, she's dialing it up here to work an audience.
Sure.
No, that's Nancy. It's so authentic. It's so her. And it casts so much energy out of her, and it just lands on you. You can't help have the reaction I did, but smile, and your energy comes up, matches her energy. It changes the room.
It does.
So cool.
And it's just crazy how she's just changed so many lives as a result of that. Like how many, especially young women, that she's been able through her nonprofit ambition to really bring up, and the success that they've had. Is just really inspiring.
I knew that if I stuck with it, I would hit that point that people would look at my brand and say, wow, they've withstood no matter what it took. And that would be like the real sort of core and meat of the brand. And after 20 years, and we're getting close to 25, people take us seriously. And so what I started to do was realize the naysayers are just going to be there, like even with ambition. Like, you can't get into the schools. You don't understand that. You don't have. I'm like, well, have you ever walked into a school and asked if you could help? Because I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of them that say, yes, please. And sure enough, there were.
Well, I think what's interesting with that conversation, and you guys, I know you both are invested in your kids' lives and the things and coaching and all the different. I see Jamie with a group of kids in an ice bath one day, like all sorts of crazy
I'm
stuff.
not in the bath.
No,
with
no,
them.
right.
There's-
Going
It
through
is
all-
a little creepy.
Yeah, it's
It's not quite that Michael Jackson.
but but like realizing, I thought what was interesting in that conversation, and then also with Michael Davidson, was the importance of investing in the youth and exposing them to all different like thoughts. And what the reason why I brought up like the ice bath, and because exposing a group of 11-year-old softball players or baseball players, whatever it is, to
Both.
Right, I've seen both, right, with you, to stop for a moment and think and like heal your body and do these things as a unit, as a team, right? When you guys sat down with Michael Davidson, the discussion around getting kids to travel and see different things and experience different things and what that impact that can have on them for the rest of their lives.
Well, Michael is interesting because the first time Gabe and I met Michael, we're at an event at the Contemporary Art Museum in Orange County.
Okay.
This is a room of who's who's, right? There's Navy SEALs, there's people high up in the government, all this stuff. Michael comes walking in, and he's this good-looking dude, right? And he's got this Conor McGregor kind of swaggy, and he's got this like skin-tight suit that's like painted on his body, and he's speaking and he's using words that, I mean, I can't even understand half of what he's saying. But what I do understand that he says, he probably talks about legacy more than anyone I've ever met. And legacy being like, how are you impacting other people?
Right.
Using your platform, using who's around you, and having a positive experience that inspires them, to give back to community, to better the world. I can't think of anyone who's a better thought leader in that space and casts a net that impacts people around them so that they cast their net, and it just creates a exponential effect.
Yeah, and his, belief in, our democracy as Americans, and the idea of freedom, and how, today feels like things are going, getting worse. But then when you reframe of where we came from, and things like civil wars and
Sure.
and the world wars, and what our grandparents and great grandparents and our ancestors have gone through, then it's about a reframing of, hey, how lucky are we to be here?
Yeah, I would tell me if I'm being dramatic in this statement, but I would say if we're 80 years old and we all agree that the face of politics changed in the U.S., that he would be like a strong influencer in influencing all these other people to help evolve the political environment. I mean, he's powerful, and he's a historian, and he's engaging with so many people.
Oh, he's gonna love that you said that.
Maybe not the painted suit part, but
So, I mean, let's step back and just zero in on leadership itself. I mean, most of the definitions and understandings of leadership are very mechanistic and status oriented. It's like you're in a position X, people follow you, and you're able to create Y. But there's no sense of meaning attached to it. You could be a good guy or a bad guy and be considered a leader.
The first episode last season was, I was actually here with you guys for that one.
Right.
I think I was just in the office that day, and you're like, dude, sit in on this conversation with like one of the most energetic, happy, but a guy with just an incredible story with Jesse Smith, 5-time Olympian, water polo, kid from Coronado, does all these amazing things. His energy, and we, at the beginning we started talking about post-athlete life, post-Navy SEAL life, right? Post-greatness. Imagine being a 5-time Olympian, and there's no professional, there's no transition from that. You did it. It's amazing. Now what? And then he was looking around, and instead of, as some will, which is okay, compartmentalize and feel that weight on them as a human, he looked around at all his fellow Olympians and said, how do I help them? How do I feel what I'm feeling and realize they're all feeling it and make a difference? Like, that was strong, man. I loved it.
Well, I think he's having an immediate impact, but I think Jesse would tell you himself he's still trying to figure it out. He's fresh on his transition. But what I love that he's doing, I originally met Jesse because Steve Gill is one of our team members, played pro water polo, and we needed leadership in the Coronado club. And so Steve sets an appointment with he and another Olympian, and Jesse steps up. He's probably giving 30 to 40 hours a week back to that community to help rebuild that program. And the energy he brings, I mean, when you're at a water polo event, when Jesse hits the deck, everything stops. There's referees coming to him. There's coaches coming to him. There's players coming to him. I mean, it's stardom at a level that would rival like Machado or any great athlete and Olympian. He's that. And he's so humble and willing to just dive in and give back to the community. That's my favorite part about him. But his energy, you're right.
Yeah,
it's
my
just
favorite part
crazy.
is his energy. And that's why he's so successful at everything he does, is that everyone just feels that energy.
I loved his ability and comfort level with himself to ask for help. When he reached out to Bill Walton, blind, like blind message, just, hey, this is who I am. I'd love to talk. Like that is, that is such a gift to be able to be that comfortable to do that, and then to take that and now be telling everybody to do it. I mean,
well, that's vulnerability, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
at its best,
vulnerability is strength.
Yeah, and humility and being okay, and he definitely brings an energy to the. I mean, I haven't seen him on a deck of a water polo match, but I've seen him in this office, and the energy that he brings in, and just, you're right, the humbleness and the kindness and the genuine care.
We had the best coach in the world in our sport, this guy named Ratko Rudic, who has 3 gold medals with different teams. Also as a player, he's from Yugoslavia.
Wow.
And he basically said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select people based on character and put them through the ringer. It's kind of like Navy SEALs. There was no cutting. It was only like people would self-select out. Training was so hard, but I was a young guy, and I was like, oh, this is normal. I had no idea that this was like the most insane thing ever that happened. And so making it through that, and I was the youngest guy on the Olympic team in 2004, and like after that, like everything's in perspective, And so I have a lot of energy because we had like insane trainings. And then you learn about your health, you learn about your diet, you learn about what helps, and it's funny because even now, like I was learning some things from you, Jamie, about the cold bath and all that stuff. And so for me, like I'm trying to learn from people that are successful in business, like, hey, what works for you, and what do I need to learn as an athlete? And so like I've learned that through sports, like that's what you do, right? You're not like status quo. It's like, hey, how can I get better?
I think that's one of the things too, that when you go through all of these people, there's a commonality, right? We talked about all different things for each of them, but each of them, there's a thread that pulls them all together, which is making an impact, caring, genuinely caring, and wanting to pay it back to everybody around them. Like that is powerful.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's one of the 3 C's, as you know. And so to bring together a group of people that's so vested in something that's at the core of who we are, it's special, to get to spend time around people like that. And it renews like my energy, it fills me up to want to cast that out. So I am very appreciative of the opportunity to get to spend time with each of these individuals.
Yeah, season 2 was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I want to wrap it with this. I think for my opportunity to sort of pay this forward too, is I want to congratulate you guys for trusting us as a partner to come in and guide you. And when we pitched you this concept and we talked about it, it was kind of like a little rolled eyes a little bit. I think Jamie was a little bit more excited than Gabe was. And then
we're like, who wants to hear from some insurance?
Yeah, exactly. And
but
so
Gabe's cutting intros now. He's fully leaned in.
Well,
he's nailing it.
No, I love it because, but why I love this is the reason this works really well is how many businesses would love to bring in some of these folks to speak to their staff. With the world today, right? You got people moving everywhere. Everybody's moving so fast that you guys have identified who your audience is, right? It's your staff. You're telling stories to your team. Right.
We don't call them staff.
like your team. Like,
yeah.
But it's your people. And when you ladder out from your team to the community just outside of them, right? Probably your clients, family members of your team members, and you go one rung, hopefully beyond that.
You're talking about me as dad now.
Yes, right. You're taking these opportunities that you could have in a closed environment right here, and you're allowing them to be shared and let them absorb them in their own way. And I think that's amazing. And I know it has had an impact in your company, but I just think it is a testament to you guys believing in where you were trying to go and going after it wholeheartedly. So congrats.
Well, we're just grateful to have you and the family. Right?
I mean, listen, I think the part that when we were talking about Jesse Smith, this all started us working together. Obviously we were friends, but this all started because I did a Jesse Smith and I asked Jamie for help. I had a question about how to do something in that I knew you guys were experts in, and I didn't know anything about it. And I just reached out for help. And then Jamie was like, wait, you're really going to quit your job? And I'm like, I am going to quit my job.
This doesn't have to do with big
Like, are you sure, Wayne?
He's like, you know, you have a really good job. You really should consider not quitting that job. I'm like, no, I'm definitely going to quit that job. And then it was like, how do we work together and do some really cool stuff? So I'm really proud of the work that you guys are doing. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing together. I see the impact that it's having. I get to, I see all the updates and I see the social from your employees just really excited about the things that you're doing. So kudos to everything. And I can't wait for season 3.
Oh man, we have some good people coming through season 3. We've already recorded a lot of the content, and I'm as excited as ever for any season we've cut.
Yeah. Any teaser on season 3 while we're here?
Yeah, I'll give you a little teaser.
Okay.
Little teaser is if you want to see Gabe in the Darth Vader. Well, what are the guys called? The White Warrior guys? I'm not a Star Wars.
I'm not a Star Wars person.
Space Troopers.
Okay.
He's wearing Stormtroopers. Gabe gets in what we call the Stormtrooper catcher gear, the all whites.
Okay.
This is where he talks about me being the catcher and him being the pitcher.
Yeah, we do at Jen Schroeder's facility, Jen Schro, and he catches a fast pitch ball. It took a few takes to get one to stick in the glove.
I got a hang of it.
I don't know what I throw, but
you were throwing.
I threw it.
I mean, it was definitely over 100 miles an hour.
Really? That's
definitely
impressive.
Not. It was probably a solid 35.
Right.
That's something. Good. It was a changeup.
Yeah.
It was a changeup. But that's a sneak peek, and
love it.
I'm really trying to pay off the right people on your team to make sure that gets laid over. It's a B-roll as we talk.
100%.
All right. So if they're visually watching
it.
That's a little extra for you.
And I'm thinking we can put it out on social as well as its own little clip.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely. There is a good social out right now of Gabe falling out of a chair. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I did not see it.
It's happened before.
I love it. Well, listen, the good news is that unlike Gabe in his chair, this podcast is on solid ground and is moving forward, and season 3 is coming. And thank you guys. Thanks for having me in the office. And thanks for
without you, Wayne.
Well,
Thank
that's
you.
true, but we'll talk to you guys soon.